The guy who faced Darth Vader, resisted the Emperor, and believed in good when everyone else gave up. But then you watch the sequels, and suddenly he is a bitter old man, hiding on an island, milking space walruses for breakfast. How did we get from hopeful farm boy to galactic hermit, who cannot even be bothered to show up when his sister is fighting for her life? The strangest part is how none of it lines up. This is the same Luke who literally threw down his lightsaber in front of Palpatine and said he would rather die than kill his own father. Yet the sequels want us to believe he almost killed his nephew in his sleep because of a bad vision. That is not character development. That is a complete rewrite, and it feels like the writers rolled dice to decide his personality, and the galaxy just goes along with it. Leia is out there leading the resistance, Han is back to smuggling like it is high school reunion day, and Luke is hiding on an island waiting for someone else to save the day. This is the guy who once ran off half-trained just to save his friends on Cloud City, and now he cannot be bothered to answer a phone call from the galaxy burning. It is not tragic, it is insulting. The humour of it all is how the sequels try to justify it. Luke grumbles about how the Jedi were flawed, as if we needed him to tell us that after watching them lose every major war in history. But coming from Luke, the one guy who rebuilt the Jedi legacy by believing in compassion, it sounds like the weirdest case of midlife crisis ever put on screen. Like, congratulations, Luke. You reinvented yourself as the galaxy's most depressed philosophy professor. Even his big heroic return is bizarre. Instead of showing up in person, he projects himself across the galaxy like a force-powered hologram, stalls Kylo for 5 minutes, and then drops dead on a rock. We waited decades for Luke Skywalker's comeback, and it plays out like a Wi-Fi glitch. The imagery is cool, sure, but the logic makes zero sense. And it leaves you wondering if the character we grew up with was ever really there at all. In this video, we are going to break down why Luke Skywalker's arc in the sequels makes absolutely no sense, how the contradictions pile up when you compare him to his original journey, why the sequels rewrote him for shock value instead of storytelling, and what could have been done to honour his legacy instead of dismantling it. Because when your hero's biggest fight is against character assassination, you know something went horribly wrong. Luke Skywalker is supposed to be the heart of Star Wars. The wide-eyed farm boy from Tatooine who became a Jedi, saved his father, and carried the galaxy into a new age. But when you line up his story across the original trilogy and the sequels, curiosity takes over. Because suddenly, the arc of this hopeful hero begins to look like a puzzle that does not fit together. Think about the Luke we knew, the kid who looked at twin suns and dreamed of adventure, the man who threw down his lightsaber in front of Palpatine to save his father, the hero who believed in people even when everyone else gave up. That Luke is consistent, believable, and inspiring. But then the sequels ask us to accept that this same man almost killed his nephew in his sleep. That is not growth, that is whiplash. The curiosity only deepens when you realise how different the tone feels. In Return of the Jedi, Luke is all about compassion, mercy and trust in the light. But by The Last Jedi, he is bitter, broken, and living like a hermit cut off from the Force. How do you connect those dots without feeling like something crucial is missing? Even his absence from The Force Awakens adds to the curiosity. The man who risked everything to help friends in need suddenly vanishes while the galaxy burns. Leia is fighting, Han is smuggling, and Luke is hiding on an island, waiting for someone else to fix it. That choice alone makes you wonder if we are even looking at the same character. Curiosity turns into doubt, because the more you think about it, the less Luke's sequel arc lines up with the journey he already completed, and that disconnect is the root of the problem. And this is where the frustration explodes, because Luke deserved better. Fans waited decades to see their hero again, only to watch him become the exact opposite of everything his story once stood for. It is like watching your favourite teacher suddenly become the principal who cancels recess for everyone. The biggest frustration is the Kylo Ren backstory. We are supposed to believe that Luke Skywalker, the man who saw good in Darth Vader after he murdered children, suddenly ignites his lightsaber to kill a sleeping teenager because of a dark vision. That is not character growth. That is character demolition. It feels less like storytelling and more like shock value, for the sake of surprise. Then there is his retreat into exile. This is the same man who rushed off to Cloud City without a plan, just to save Han and Leia, but now he hides while the First Order wipes out planets. He tells Rey that the Jedi should end, as if the galaxy will magically fix itself without anyone fighting back. It is the most frustrating contradiction imaginable, because Luke was never about giving up. But beyond the frustration, there is sorrow. Because Luke's story should have been the most inspiring continuation in Star Wars, and instead it became one of the most disappointing. The sorrow comes from watching a character who represented hope reduced to someone who barely recognizes himself. It hurts to see Luke lose faith because his entire journey was about keeping it. He believed in his friends when no one else did. He believed in his father when everyone else called him lost, and he believed in the light when darkness was overwhelming. To see that same man reject everything he stood for is not just sad, it is heartbreaking. The sorrow deepens when you think about Leia and Han, his twin sister fighting battles alone, his best friend losing his son, and Luke is nowhere to be found. His absence is more painful than any defeat because his presence could have made a difference. The galaxy needed him, and he was gone. Even his death carries sorrow. The projection duel with Kylo is visually stunning, but it is also hollow. Luke never leaves the island, never reconnects with his sister in person, never truly stands with the Resistance. His final act is powerful, but it feels disconnected, like a shadow of what could have been. The sorrow is not just about Luke's end, it is about the legacy that was lost, the inspiration that could have been passed on, and the sense that one of cinema's greatest heroes was wasted on contradictions. And yet, even with the contradictions, there are moments of awe in Luke's sequel story, because for all its flaws, his presence still commands the screen. Luke Skywalker remains a symbol, even when the writing struggles to live up to it. His duel with Kylo Ren, even as a projection, is awe-inspiring. The image of Luke standing alone against an army, brushing dust off his shoulder, and facing his fallen apprentice is one of the most iconic visuals in Star Wars. It may not make sense narratively, but cinematically it is breathtaking. There is awe in his legend too. The way the galaxy still whispers about Luke, the stories of his power spreading even when he is absent. That mythic quality adds weight to his every appearance, reminding us of how larger than life he has become. Even the quiet moments inspire awe. The sight of Luke walking among the ruins of the Jedi Temple, the weight of his choices visible in his face, the broken man carrying the burden of legacy. These moments may frustrate, but they are undeniably powerful in their imagery. And despite everything, there is still hope in Luke's story, because even when the sequels faltered, the core of who Luke is remains too powerful to erase. His legacy endures, and that gives us something to hold on to. Hope exists in how Luke inspires Rey, even if their relationship is rocky. His story pushes her forward, forces her to confront doubt, and ultimately gives her the strength to carry the fight. Even broken, Luke still sparks hope in others. There is hope in his final act too. Projected across the galaxy, his stand against Kylo becomes a rallying cry for the Resistance. Children retell the story, legends spread, and Luke's defiance gives others the courage to fight. Even if flawed, that hope reaches far beyond Arch. 2. Hope also exists in the fans themselves. Because Luke's contradictions have fueled endless debates, discussions, and reinterpretations. That passion proves how much he still matters, how deeply audiences care about him, and how much his story continues to resonate. The hope of Luke Skywalker is that no matter how messy the sequels made him, his essence as the galaxy's symbol of faith and resilience will always endure. But the resolution of Luke's sequel arc is a tragedy, because instead of building on his triumphs, the story tore him down in ways that made little sense. His contradictions leave us with an arc that feels less like a continuation and more like a betrayal. The tragedy is that Luke deserved better. He should have been the wise mentor, the flawed but steadfast hero, the man whose presence inspired a new generation. Instead, he became a symbol of defeat, a cautionary tale written for shock value. That resolution is hollow compared to what it could have been, and yet there is a lesson in that tragedy. because Star Wars shows us that even heroes can be mishandled when stories chase subversion over substance. Luke's arc is a reminder that legacy must be honoured, not rewritten for convenience. The resolution is that fans carry Luke forward in their own way, through memory, through interpretation, through the belief that his story can still inspire, even if the sequels failed him. In the end, Luke's power is not in what the films did, but in what audiences remember. So yes, Luke Skywalker's arc made no sense. And the proof is in how much it contradicted everything he once stood for. A tragic end for a hero, who should have been more than a broken shadow of himself.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.